Hi, fifth graders. We're here for Fantasy Book Club session 15, where we are going to be talking about identifying archetypes. So you might be wondering, what is an archetype? And an archetype is a typical example of a certain person or thing. And in books, in literature, or fantasy books, we can think about as like a recurrent symbol. So something that keeps showing up in all fantasy novels. And so to give you some more idea of what an archetype is here I have this chart that says some archetypes you encounter in fantasy books. So these are like characters. In this case, we're talking about characters, but they could be characters, it could be settings, it could be themes that are oftentimes in fantasy novels. But today we're going to be talking about just common characters that we often see in fantasy novels. So here on this chart, you can see that the first one there at the top is the hero. So in fantasy novels, we always have a hero. A hero is a good character who is often lonely and would rather not have to be a hero. The hero has to complete his or her quest alone, and they usually win. Then we always have a villain. A villain is a bad character who is often surrounded by other characters he or she is mean to and wants to be in charge of everything, usually loses. Then we have the wise person, who is a very smart character who usually helps the hero by teaching him or her. And then there's always companions or friends. These are people who are friends with the hero or villain. They mostly stick to the hero or villain. However, some of them can be false friends. So again, archetypes that we encounter in fantasy books almost always are these ones here: the hero, the villain, the wise person, and companions and friends. So those are the archetypes we're going to focus on today. So our learning target is use your knowledge of archetypes to make predictions, inferences, and interpretations. This is important because we're learning more and more about fantasy novels and just how they're written. And so this is one of those pieces that fantasy novels are usually written with those archetypes that we just talked about: a hero, a villain, a wise person, and companions and friends. Okay, so they're usually written in that way. So we're going to be thinking about, okay, if we know that fantasy novels always have a hero and always have a villain, and we know that the heroes, usually are feeling a little bit lonely and usually have to defeat the villain on their own in the very end. What does that tell us about our fantasy novels? And can we make predictions or inferences based on that information and what we know about those archetypes? So that's going to be our work today. So in order to do this work, we are actually going to take a look at a video, and this is just about a 1-minute video. It's actually a commercial. But what I want you to be thinking about as we watch it is which characters represent which archetypes. So be thinking about like the hero, the villain, the wise person, or the companions and friends. And are there characters in this video that represent those archetypes? So first, we're just going to identify them, okay?
Where you go in life is up to you. There's one airline that can take you there. United. It's time to fly.
Watch that video, I was thinking about the archetypes that I noticed, and maybe you noticed these as well. So I listed these in the chart here. That the dad in the video was the hero. He seemed like the hero. The other knights around the table were dad's companions. And so they were kind of his friends or companions and helped him along the way with that challenge that he had. And then there was the dragon that I noticed that we oftentimes see in fantasy novels. We see a dragon there. Okay. Um, and now what I want us to do is we're going to actually watch the video again. And this time, instead of just identifying the archetypes, I want you to be thinking about what do those archetypes mean, or what predictions can we make, or inferences can we make based on the fact that we've identified those archetypes and what we know about those archetypes and how those usually go in fantasy novels. So if you're having a hard time thinking about this, I know this is a challenging topic. Here's a guiding question that you can think of as you watch. Since we know the dad is the hero, what can we infer about the dad, the boy, and their family? Okay, so you might be thinking about the dad as the hero, and what does that mean for the other parts of this video? All right, so let's go ahead and take a watch again and be thinking about what do these archetypes make you think?
Where you go in life is up to you. There's one airline that can take you there. United. It's time to fly.
Okay, so there in my chart, I went ahead and filled in what the archetypes made me think and what they meant based off of what I know about archetypes. And so, first of all, thinking about the hero. So, dad is the boy's hero, and that's for sure. Next, the dad is just as conflicted as other heroes we see in fantasy books. He doesn't really want to leave his family, but he knows it's what is best. And you can almost see this on his expression throughout the video is that, um, you know, he wants he wants to provide for his family and he wants to go on or he wants to defeat this dragon. With his companions. However, you know, you can think about how he misses his son and he doesn't want to be away from his son. But he knows it's what's best and what's needed. And the final thing that I wrote was the dragon means trouble for the dad, but the dragon is a symbol for adventure for the boy. Because notice how, I mean, you know, the dad had to defeat the dragon. So the dragon's kind of the villain or the challenge in this scenario. However, the dad brings home a little toy dragon for the son to play with. And so the son thinks of it more as an adventure. Okay, so it can kind of mean two different things in that sense. So your assignment looks like this. And basically, what you're going to be doing is you are going to be thinking about the common archetypes that we see in fantasy books and identifying those for your own fantasy books. So your assignment will look like this paper here on the left. It says fill in the table below for your fantasy book, then make a prediction, inference, or interpretation based on what you know about that archetype in fantasy books. All right. So here you have the hero. So you would go ahead and you'd write down the hero in your fantasy book and then make a prediction, inference, or interpretation. So tell me something about that hero that you know or that you can predict or that you can infer based on what we know about heroes. And this chart up at the top will probably help you with that, reminding you just kind of what the hero's role is in fantasy books. Okay. It has that description right here that will be helpful. And that goes for all of the other archetypes as well. So I went ahead and I I just did an example of the very first one, just to kind of give you an idea of what that prediction, inference, or interpretation can sound like, or um, what you might, write. So first of all, the archetype I chose was the hero. Um, I'm thinking about Harry Potter, as that's the book I'm reading right now. So he's the hero in that book. And I wrote, Harry constantly thinks everyone has made a mistake, that he doesn't think he is special or someone who can defeat Voldemort. Though he relies on friends for help now, in the end, he will be the one who has to defeat Voldemort on his own. Okay. So that's just kind of some thinking that I was doing based on what I know about heroes and how they have to complete their quests on their own, usually, as well as, that they would rather not be the hero, or they don't really believe that they're qualified to be the hero. Okay. So I kind of use that information to make that inference and that interpretation about Harry Potter. All right, so there's a good example of that. And you'll go ahead and do this for your fantasy books and do this for each of the 4 archetypes I have written here. All right, I look forward to discussing this in book clubs. I'll see you guys there.
Hey, 5th graders, this is Miss Olson, and we're going to start session 15, which is our second lesson on speech writing. And so I'm really excited to get going on that. I've heard some great ideas about what you're going to write your speeches about. And so now we're going to spend a little bit of time on how to develop those well and make them extremely strong. Today's target is I can develop my speech to include examples and evidence to make my speech more persuasive and just to convince people of what it is you want done. So one of the things that I wanted to share with you about is when you have an idea that you really feel really strongly about and you want to make happen, you feel like it's really going to be an important idea and that it will actually change things for a lot of people, that you actually are always thinking about it. It almost kind of consumes you. And so when you're thinking of something that you really feel strongly about, you're kind of like a magnet, that you're always collecting different stories or pieces of data or perspectives from all around you. So you might have your own personal stories of something that happened that really led you to want to fight for this specific topic that you are trying to persuade your reader to agree with. You might also add in stories that someone else has. So maybe someone else has had a similar experience or an experience in that same location or with that same topic that you can share as well, that adds to yours. Sometimes it might just be spending some time observing the scenario that you're trying to change. You can interview people and find out, what do you think about this? I know one of the topics that comes up often in 5th grade is, why can't we wear hats in school? That might be something that you would be interested in writing a speech about, and you can make observations. How are kids acting differently or the same if they're wearing hats? You could interview certain kids and find out how they feel about it. You can research and find out, where did that rule about not wearing hats in schools come from to start with? And you can collect other stories. But the big idea is, when something's really, really important to you like that you are essentially like a magnet and you're constantly looking and listening and grabbing new pieces of data that are going to support your speech and how to persuade it. So I wanted to share with you my example from the recycling one. So one of the reasons I said we needed to get better at recycling is that the bins are a huge mess. So just in looking at it and collecting some data, it's gross. There's banana peels, sometimes there's food wrappers, candy wrappers, plastic straws, potato chips bags. So that's just me looking into the bin and seeing that. Like, clearly, that's not what the bin is for. And so we need to do some work around how to set that up. Tissues, that's a big one that often ends up in the bin. So those are just some data that I collected, and that tells me that we can do better at it, right? So those might be some of my evidence and reasons. It doesn't mean I'm going to use all of them, but I just put them on my page because I want to have a whole lot of ideas that I can come back to and reinforce my reason and make it stronger. So another reason that we need this change is because kids don't know what goes in the bins, similar to what I said before, and they don't respect the labels. So right here, I see kids getting confused about what goes in. Where does this go, is what they're saying. And then another specific story. Last week I saw a kid drop a whole armful of stuff in the recycling bin at the end of the hall. She looked at some of the stuff and then just shrugged her shoulders and dropped it all in. I think maybe she wasn't sure where it could go. Okay, so how do we teach people what goes in there? Also, another example is an interviewing somebody else or another student. So I always see stuff that doesn't belong. I think it's a big problem, and I'm not sure where it goes. Okay, so those are some of the quotes that you could get from interviewing another student. Solution. So coming up with ideas of how to solve the problem. That's the last piece, and it can go with collecting, kind of like the magnet piece as well, like collecting some of your ideas. So one could be, we want better labels. So thinking of like, that is going to help solve some of those problems. Maybe we need an assembly that teaches people how to do it, because both of my reasons really had to do with people not knowing what to do. Then some other ideas. What if we had bigger bins or more bins? Or maybe we could have like bin monitors, some people that check and do the job, and just try and explaining how to help. So we have solutions. So really, even every time we're thinking about our issue or a topic that we're wanting to persuade, we're also thinking about what could a solution be. So if you're creating a solution that is going to cost a lot of money, how are we going to get the money for that? If you have a solution that maybe is a compromise, what are some different things and who is it going to benefit? I think that's one of the really important things, is thinking of the different perspectives. This can't all just be about you. It needs to be helping either make our school better, our community better, and most likely it is going to help you as well, but be thinking about other people too, and how is this thing that you are fighting for and trying to persuade, how is it going to benefit them as well? Again, when we are collecting evidence and we're thinking about all of the different ways we could support our opinion, going back to these, and we can use some of these sentence stems. So you could have personal stories that start off with one time when I was, or stories about other people. One time when blank was, that could be an example. Observations, once I heard someone say, or once I saw. Quotes from an interview, when I interviewed this person, she told me that, and then you can explain what it is that you learned from them. And then research from the text. So according to the text, it said this, or on the news, blank reported this. So using these sentence stems is really going to help you, make you sound like an expert on it, and that you've done your research, and present your information in a way that sounds very professional. And so wanting to keep those things in mind as you're doing it. So again, your job for this week is to do a lot of your research, make sure that you have a lot of ideas, and you're always collecting stories, data, and perspectives, kind of like a magnet. And again, these are the tools. So for this task, you do not need to send a picture in. I'm looking forward to being able to see your plans in book club and seeing all the little notes and details you put with it. But this will lead into the next lesson that we'll have this week that you will send pictures for. So I'm looking forward to seeing it, and miss you guys. And we'll see you soon.
Hi, fifth graders. It's Mrs. McMillan here, and I'm here with today's Math Minute, or 10. Today, our target is, I can use estimation to fluently multiply. Remember, the estimation is a good guess. So sometimes people say it's a guesstimation. We're going to be estimating when we multiply, and we have lots of different strategies to do just that. Your success criteria is going to be to estimate, use the standard algorithm, and solve that problem. Remember, when you're finished, to take a picture and send it to either Mrs. Leibel or myself, because we want to see just how great you are doing. So I'm going to give you just a moment. I'd like you to go ahead and make sure you have multiplication round in check. It looks just like this, as well as a pencil and a good place to work. Because remember, even though we're doing math at home, we still need a location that's quiet and can help us do our very best. So I'm going to go ahead and pause. If you need to move your computer to a table that's away from a television, away from brothers and sisters, do that. Grab your pencil, grab your paper, meet me back here. All right, fifth grade, I'm glad you're back and ready to go. So again, we are going to be using estimation to fluently multiply. What we're trying to do is we're trying to decide what is going to be a good answer. Does my answer make sense when we get there? And so estimation helps us think, whoa, I was way off, or yeah, actually I'm pretty close. So I'm going to go ahead and give you a problem that we're going to work through together. And our first problem is going to be 12 times 39. And when I look at 12 times 39, I'm going to look at each of these numbers separately and think about a landmark number that I can use that will help me solve this problem or help me get close to the answer. So I'm going to think about 12, I'm just going to think about it as a 10. I know how to multiply by 10, and so it feels good to be able to use 10 as my estimation. And then this 39, I'm also going to use a multiple of 10 because, again, multiples of 10 are very helpful when we are estimating. Multiples of 10 are helpful for lots of different things. So I know the closest multiple of 10 to 39 is 40. So then I have 10 times 40, which I know is 400, and I can do that quickly in my head. I cannot do 12 times 39 very quick in my head. But what I can do is use the standard algorithm to multiply and see if my answer gets close. So I will have 12 times 39. As a reminder, we're multiplying all the digits on the bottom by all the digits on the top. Let's go ahead and start out with the lowest place value on the bottom, which is the ones place, and this 9. I'm going to start with the 9, and I'm going to first multiply by the ones place in the top. So I have 9 times 2, which is 18. I'm going to regroup that 1. Then I'm going to move over, and I'm going to multiply that 9 by the tens place value. So now I have 9 times 1, which is 9, plus 1, which is 10. So now I've multiplied the ones place value by all of the digits on the top. Now I'm going to move over to the tens place value. Because we know this 3 is in the tens place, it really means 30. I'm going to go ahead and put a 0 right here to hold that place value, knowing that we're talking about the tens place and not the ones place. 3 times 2 is 6, and 3 times 1 is 3. And now I'm going to go ahead and add those together. 8 plus 0 is 8, 0 plus 6 is 6, and 1 plus 3 is 4. The answer to 12 times 39 is 468. I'm going to go ahead and circle that so I know where my answer is. And that's pretty close to my answer. I probably could have gotten better, but that's pretty close and that will work. As you go through your problems today, I want you to be thinking, what did I learn here? How does it apply to the next problem? A lot of these problems build on one another, so your estimate can get a little closer. Let's go ahead and do a second problem that builds on this first problem that we did that was 12 times 39. So this time I'm going to do 12 times 41. And I could start off doing that estimation just like we did before, where I thought 12 was about 10, and I thought 41 was about 40, and I got 400. However, we know that 12 times 39 was 468. And so I'm guessing that, I'm not even guessing. I know that 12 times 41 is going to be higher than that. And so I'm going to say that maybe my answer is actually closer to 500. So my estimation is going to be 500 based on actually doing an estimate as well as looking at the previous problem we just did. Now let's go ahead and multiply those together and see what happens. If I have 12 times 41, I'm going to use the standard algorithm. That was part of our target right at the beginning. 12 times 41. 2 times 1 is 2. 1 times 1 is 1. And I'm going to go ahead and put a 0 here to hold the place value. I've used the ones place. Now I'm moving over to the tens place. So I know that I don't have any more in the ones. I'm just working in the tens. 4 times 2 is 8. And 4 times 1 is 4. I'm going to add those together and I get 2, 9, and 4. So my answer is 492. And we said my estimate was 500. 492 is pretty close to 500. I want you to be sure you estimate first, then use the standard algorithm, and then finally solve your problem. Take a picture, send it in when you're done. We appreciate all the hard work you're doing. Great job. Keep it up. You got it this week. We'll talk to you later. Bye.